Thank you very much, and thank you for changing the time to accommodate me for today. So let's begin. Open Spaces meeting. Apologies for absence and reason given, please.
Councillor Dan Taylor has given his apologies and the reason is acceptable. Is acceptable, sorry. And Councillor Carol Kenyon will be arriving in about half an hour. She's running late.
Okay, thank you very much.
Proposer, please. Thank you. Seconder. Thank you. Agreed.
Agreed, yeah.
Thank you.
So 81 minutes of the previous meeting.
There's meetings of 17th of August which haven't been signed on the 21st of September. Thanks.
I'll second.
Thank you. Agreed. Yeah.
Scratch it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Right, we've got any declarations of interest, please?
I don't know if I have or haven't, but in number 2021 to 87 allotments, just in case.
Yeah.
Not peculiar.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You can always add to it if we come across something further into the meeting. Okay, so clerk's report, please.
Okay, so we have the parks team have got the chipper working, but we are unsure as to whether the Kubota is powerful enough to continually use the chipper. So we put in a call to the local supplier to ask that has done work on our Kubotas to ask that question. We're waiting for them to come back. Battlefields, myself, both councillors Hutchinson and the new member parks team went there yesterday and saw somebody offloading some rubbish from their vehicle and building a very large bonfire ready for bonfire night. So we've written a letter, she'll go out tomorrow, explaining it's not to be done. Uniform, we're waiting for prices to come back. We need to make the appointment with Holbeach Bank, so Rachel's going to be seeing them to do that. The canopy's been lifted on the trees in Park Road Cemetery, on the walkway through. There's been some issue with the toilets in Carter's Park over the weekend, and there's been some youths climbing on the roof. And there's been a bit of a damaged headstone, which I believe members know about, in Hallgate Cemetery. It's me done.
Okay, thank you very much. We've all seen the emails on that, haven't we? Thank you. Right, Carter Park update to agree the way forward with regard to the siren. We haven't had any feedback saying that it's not working without a siren, have we? Steve?
Can I propose we leave it as it is?
I think it's a good
I
idea.
second it. I don't think there's an issue. There's not been any issue currently. There may be more in the summer,
Yeah.
so we may have to review it then, but certainly through the winter months I think
If
we'll
a
be
problem
fine.
crops up,
Yeah.
we will have to have a rethink, but for the time being, can I have a proposal and a seconder, please? Same people? All agreed?
You've got no choice tonight.
No. There's usually one of the other weeks. Right, to agree the design on the all-inclusive swing seat as well.
Obviously, you know that I have met with one of the companies down there, and they are coming up with a scheme, a whole scheme, but I have said to them what we'd like to do in the interim is to put in an inclusive seat on the existing frame. So they're going to quote for that, so I'm waiting for them to come back, but I just wanted to clarify what type of style you're looking for, because obviously I can then go out to other companies to see what their costings are. So there's loads of different ones. If you remember, I did sort of show before. There's
Bear in mind what sort of height, age and weight we're going to go
Well,
up to.
we're looking sort of up to mid-teens, I think, no more than that. So we've got that sort of thing. But I thought we were looking more of the bucket type, were we not? Plastic bucket?
It's a lot better for handling.
Yeah. So are you happy for me to look at the alternatives that are out there for that type of thing? Do
The
you?
scoop with or without harness?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Do you want a harness on it or do you not?
Harnesses are more maintenance.
Well, they're likely to be cut, aren't they?
Yeah. And they do get a bit grubby.
Because if this scoop is the right depth, then it won't matter because they won't physically be able to fall out.
And they're not like a normal parts when we can run them round.
No.
You know, they cannot go that far. The scoops, I think, for anybody placing person into it is a lot easier than having to mess about with bits and pieces.
Okay.
So it makes it easier for everyone. And it doesn't look so different to everybody else.
The company that I've met with, they do one like
The
that.
scoop.
I don't know what the pricing is. Obviously that'll come when they quote, and they're due to have that back by the end of this month.
I think for us looking after it in the long
Yeah.
term.
And then I can look at alternatives, because I know there are a couple more companies that do similar to that. So if I just get together some pricing for the ones that I can find. And
I mean, by all means, look at some of the hardest ones and see what you think, but I think for maintenance and upkeep, and just keeping them clean is a bit difficult.
okay. Well, I'll have a look at that, because what I would like to do ideally is try and get something that is affordable so we can actually get it in. Because
Well,
we
this
have
is what I
obviously
said.
got the money that was donated through the car show. It won't quite make it, but it will be close to, I suspect. So I think if we can get that ordered and get that in place, that would be a real big win.
Definitely. Yeah, brilliant, thank you very much. So you'll get back to us once you've...
Yes, once I've got some costings.
Okay.
I have a proposal on that.
Go on, I'll do that one. All agreed? Neverfield's update. I did have a bit of a look around Neverfield the other day. Our signs are still up,
Yeah.
so I would like them removed as soon as possible, please.
I think there's an issue with that. By what I'm aware, the fixings have been welded, so therefore you can't just take them off. So what's happened in the park, the things that need to be covered over have just been temporarily covered over with tape. It doesn't look professional, but it does the job. I don't know whether the ones at Netherfield are the same. We haven't investigated those properly, but I suspect they have been welded as well. In which
I
case,
only looked at the front, I didn't have a good record.
no, so if they have been welded from the back, you're not going to just be able to take them off.
Ankle grinder.
Yeah, that's pretty much where you're going to be at.
Yeah, but it's something we're going to have to do.
Yeah.
So I'm got another recce down there. I'm off tomorrow, so I'll go have a look and see how it's fixed. And apart from that, I couldn't see any other problems down there, the fields.
No. We are going to discuss about the equipment at our next work scheduling as to whether they feel it's something that they can now undertake.
Yeah.
It's a matter of obviously looking through all of the specification, etc., and just working out whether it's something they can tackle soon, and if not, it'll have to be deferred to.
Okay, well, after your scheduling meeting, you're just gonna have to let us know.
Yeah.
We'll know what we're doing. I guess I think that never feels pretty covered. I haven't had any more reports, bits and pieces down there, so it seems to have quieted down a bit.
Yeah.
That's good. Cemeteries update.
Yesterday,
Hello? Where?
update on trees.
Oh, sorry. Updated trees on LCC.
They will be delivered in January. We just now have to wait
I
to be
think.
given a date of delivery.
Okay, so we've got a little bit of time to plan where these are going. Fantastic.
That'll probably work well with your scheduling, so if they do have to delay in other fields, they can plan.
Yeah.
Because obviously these trees are going to be a big part of that soft landscaping and things, so that might work really well.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for sorting that, John. Cemeteries update then. To agree the layout plan, oh, hang on, we'll do an update on the cemetery first. Hallgate. Obviously we've had a couple of issues down there. Hopefully we'll get them sorted out. I am concerned about people using it as a recreational area. I don't know how we can go about them not using it as an area, because obviously we do have people walk dogs around it as well. So, but I certainly don't want people sparring down there or using it as a keep fit place. But I don't know how we can go about stopping this. Whether we have a reminder sign up there that this is not a recreational area, and please respect what it's there for, or how we go about it. Any ideas?
From my experience, because you've got all the graves over one side and you've got all that open space, obviously it is a public open space, whichever way you look at it, and the guys that go down there for sparring, if you like, it seems to be a very minimal group. It's not like there's hordes of people and there's not people footballing down and things like that. Sometimes if you attract attention to these things, they tend to fizzle out. If you start sort of saying things or putting signs up saying, a sign saying, that the Remembrance Garden is here, along those lines would be anything like a cemetery, but, with public open spaces, can we really not?
It's not really a public open space though. It is Parish Council Cemetery.
Yeah, but it's open, isn't it? And it is an open space.
I'm not comfortable with that on you. Let's just see how it goes.
Yeah, there isn't much you can actually do, really. Even if you've got a sign up, nobody's going to take any notice of
They've
it.
changed the plan.
Yeah, I think the best thing we can do is make sure that our staff visit regularly, all of our areas, to keep an eye on everything, and that's something else that we can add into the schedule so that we make it clear that we're expecting them to visit at least once a week. Because then the chance, yes, there is the chance that they could come across something, and at least then anything they see will be reported back, because you're not always going to get a report from a member of the public, but
No.
you will get a report back from a member of staff.
No.
So I think making it so that we have got a presence down there on a regular basis will make a big difference.
No, we're going to have to. Also, the turf is still there. Yeah, next to the bin. On the floor.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, when we looked before we did the last scheduling, we couldn't see it.
If you look on the floor between the shed and the bin,
Right, it's there.
it's all there.
Okay.
It's on a blue tarpaulin. It doesn't seem to be as much as it was,
Okay.
so there's definitely some there, and also now the tidying up of the rose bed.
Yep.
Be nice. And that's all. And you heard what I said about the, I noticed that curbstone was great when we had the skip delivery. So, and that was ages ago. Okay, anybody else got anything for safety? Right, so to agree the layout plan for Hallgate Cemetery. I don't know if anybody's noticed that they are quite tightly packed in at the other end, which I don't think is very nice at all. You can't really stand at the foot of your grave on that next row without sitting or perching on the headstone behind you.
When we visited with our first new member of staff, we were looking at it And actually, by the way it's been laid out, I mean, I don't know whether there's any technical reason why it's done this way. You've got that row there, and then you've got the other row there, but then the next row is here. So obviously the headstones are all facing this way, and then you've physically got to walk over somebody's grave to get to your grave. And they suggested that would it be possible to turn them so that they're back to back. So at least then you're actually reducing the amount of space that you're using, so you're going to end up with another row potentially that you could use. And then you wouldn't have the problem of people having to walk over a grave, because they would have you would then have the walkway at the foot of the grave to be able to walk to the next one.
This is what we was discussing, because I wanted to make sure that there is no real protocols to how we should do it. And I think back to back with the gravestones would be a lot better. And just like I say, you're just not going on somebody else's space.
With having looked at it recently, the row that has been started, there's not many in that row.
There isn't.
So you could continue it, but doing it back to back, and it wouldn't look too odd.
But this is what I wanted to ask, because if we're going to do it, we need to do it soon. Okay. We're just discussing the change of the layout of Hallgate Cemetery, because it's
What, sorry?
the layout of Hallgate Cemetery.
Yeah.
Just to make it a little bit more user-friendly, and not encroaching on other people's space when you're visiting your own graves down.
Yeah.
So, is there something we can decide here and now?
The only thing that, I don't know whether it is something that has to be done that way or not, but I was always led to believe, certainly in Park Road, that the ashes faced one way and the burials faced the opposite way. Now, whether that was just a way that it's been done, it's not yeah. If it's not a legal reason why we have to do that, then there is no reason why we can't do back to back. I think we just need.
You haven't found anything?
Yes.
No. So, I think we should change it.
Have we measured it out, how that would affect the layout moving forward, whether we'd get another row, or would you be ending up with a bit of a funny odd bit at the end?
We'll get some shrubs. I don't think it matters if we get another row or not. It's going to be better for visiting your own plot if we change something.
I think it's not just really the fact of stepping over a grave, it's the space in between them too is quite strange down there. When I've gone visiting down there, I thought it feels a bit awkward, but doing that change, and there's so much area there, you know, that we aren't going to need to worry about space for a long, long time down there, are we? And there's still space in Park Road, so, you know, with a bit of shrubs and a bit of whatever, I think it would actually complement the area.
I just think if we're going to do it, we need to do it soon.
I think if we sat down, and Brandy's done a lot of work on the cemeteries, hasn't she, with one thing and another, with yourself. Whether we agree that the layout will change, and then it can be decided with the parks team and everyone else the best way to carry that forward, because obviously we're going to have interments coming up, and like you said, change it now, and then it saves the awkwardness later
I think
on.
we've only got 5 at the moment.
Yeah.
On that road, there's certainly a few, isn't there? I mean, I think there's 1 or 2 that hasn't got the headstone up yet. But obviously, you can't now ask them to do it the opposite end, because that's not fair. But then from now on, you would have to just change the way.
I think
So I would propose that we agree to change the layout, but the detail needs to be fine-tuned.
Yeah, no, I'm quite happy with that.
I'll second that.
Agree? Yeah. All agreed. Thank you. say we're to agree to remove the toilet at Park Road Cemetery? Please.
I got three proposals.
First time ever.
Okay, that was an easy one. I like that one. How can we dispose of that?
Sorry?
How are we going to dispose of it?
It is only a wooden shed with a urinal in it, but the urinal is not, it's not going anywhere, should we say.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So it's just a matter of
That's all it is.
ripping it out and
Right,
Timber.
getting rid of.
brilliant. Thank you very much. Right, allotments update. I'll bring it down.
Are you looking to me?
Yes, please.
All the invoices have gone out. Some have been paid, some haven't yet, but it's still mid-October, so I'm just waiting for that. And the rest is really on the agenda.
Fantastic, yeah. Right, so you have me carrying, yeah?
Mhm.
To agree to programme the removal of wood at Buttersfield Lane following the recent remedial works. So this is the remnants of the shed.
Yeah, I'll propose that.
Yeah. All agreed? Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant. To discuss and agree to take legal advice on the asbestos issue at Buttersfield allotment. Okay.
If I just outline it.
Yeah.
At our meeting for the Farmer Education Trust, obviously they're taking a fortnight now to read all of the documentation to come back with what they feel is the way forward.
Okay.
Now, having had a conversation with a few people, there's not clarity as to who is technically responsible for the remedial works, if you see what I mean. Should it be the landowner or should it be the tenant? Because if you were looking at it as if it were a property, and I owned the property and you rented the property from me, and then we discovered that there was asbestos in there, I would not expect you as the tenant to pay for the removal of the asbestos. I would have to take that hit because I'm the owner of the property. So therefore, what we need to do is look at whether we as tenants would be fully responsible should there be a claim years down the line, or whether we are jointly responsible, or whether we're not responsible at all. So we need to be very clear as to what our situation is, because the trust are taking legal advice as well. So therefore we need to be sure what we're saying and what they're saying. We're going to come to a compromise somewhere along the line, but we need to take our own personal advice rather than just relying on what they're saying to us.
Can we do that through our, what we use for the insurance? Or is
You
it
can
separate?
try, but I don't think they'd be specialist enough. I think you'd need to look at somebody that is a bit more specialised in that sort of thing. Stephen?
Yeah, just to add on really, I did a bit of research into the situation with regards to, you know, what was discussed in that meeting, because one of the things that Isabel's just touched on is quite true. The liability lies with the actual owner. They agreed to sublet it, and the terms of the sublet doesn't relinquish ownership. Now, from what we've done is we've remedied a problem. If there was clear evidence that those buildings were already there or not there right from the time that we took it on. So for instance, if we then took it on and it was just a field, and then we've split it up and sublet it for allotments, but allotment holders have erected asbestos style outbuildings, which were very popular way back when. That ownership is obviously so weak because it's passed on and on and on. And if you haven't got a watertight lease from the word go, with things like detailed inventories and conditions and evidence of, there's nothing to go back to say, well, in fact, it's not our problem. We're actually only a tenant. So although we have an obligation to look after it as guardians, as appointed by the trust, I think think we just have to be careful that we do take that legal advice, because that remedial work is quite extensive and a lot of money. But from what I saw and what I've looked into, it's actually not a requirement from us as a tenant.
Okay. Are you happy to have a look about someone who can do a bit of legal advice for us, please?
We'll sold us, not sold, that's what I'm on about.
Just gonna say, I'll find that out.
Are they repair, radar, are they?
That's with our insurance company.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it'd be worth an ask initially, just as a,
They might put us into the
Yeah.
direction or something.
I don't think that they would give you enough advice. I think you would need to go into more detail, but it would be worth a general ask as to what they feel the situation would be. We wouldn't be able to use one of the local solicitors because that is the trust solicitor, so they would be out
Can
the
you pass
information.
on who that is to Jan?
Yes, I already have done.
Right.
But it's a tricky one because it's land and not property as such. So the premise is the same, but I don't think there's actually been any test case out there that we could refer to. But we just need to be sure of what we're talking about, because the trust have basically given themselves 2 weeks to decide how they wish to respond to us. So we need to be ready when they do respond with our response back.
If I just can make a quick closing comment on that, I'll just drag it out. The way that it was explained to me that if it went to arbitration as a tenant to the leaseholder, it'd be very difficult for them to prove that we actually caused the asbestos contamination in the instance, so they wouldn't win. But that was only a loose, so that's why I thought I'd mention it tonight,
Yeah,
so
well,
that we do to get
Have a
that.
chat with
advice.
someone for that. Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, propose.
Can I just ask, I suppose we scrutinise the lease, that's a stupid question, but
Yeah.
it's not just
It
nothing.
is,
isn't it?
well, it's a very old lease,
Ah,
and it's a rolling lease, and it is a bit, not really that fit for purpose, to be fair.
The lease should
I would-
contain.
I would suggest that maybe the trust would be looking to now renew the lease,
yeah.
because it is a very old lease, and we didn't even have a copy of it, not that we could find,
Really?
but we have now, because I've managed to get the copy through the trust. But it's a very
How long
old,
have we had it?
1974.
Unless it says, in the case of our asbestos contamination, this is what's expected.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't say that in the lease, then
I have a proposal, and I think Carol.
Yeah,
Carol
I do.
Judd, second.
All agreed. Okay. To discuss and agree the increase in allotment rents. You're going to get some figures for us, weren't you?
I put out the, what each. What was I asking? I put the folder out showing, what prices are now. So a dog drove, they're £65 a year per plot. A plank hook, they work out at £34.72 per plot, except for one, which is a garden strip, which is 13. Plank hook is £69.84, and the garden strip is £13.88. Callows, 20 plots are £2,306.94. Bassite, 1 to 8 is £600. And then battlefields, generally they're £25, but there's some that are bigger areas, Have you seen the document?
No, I haven't, I'm just looking at it now. See, I can't understand how we don't do it on like acreage and things
It
like
may
that.
well be, but I can't
Yeah.
find anything that
So sizes.
gives that. No.
No. Steve?
If we look back a couple of years, those sites were like Battlesfield was all split down into
Mhm.
smaller allotments to manage. It'd be quite good to do a comparison of what it was charged then. If they say it was £100 a plot and all they've done is split it into 4 and reduce it to 25,
Yeah.
because then sites were about half an acre and it was far too big for people to manage. But you know, looking in line with everybody else for allotment fees, some of they really need bringing in line, and some of them are well cheap really for a year. You know, we was talking about the same thing in the cemeteries, not mixing up with gender items, but you know, we thought that we should come in line, more in line, and I think we should with the allotments. And I think the reason it was on the agenda was because we had to give a year's notice,
Yeah.
and it would be good to get that notice out to say that we will be reviewing them and increasing
I
them.
can't put it up now until September 23,
Yeah, but we can
but
sort
you
it.
can put the notice out.
As well.
I think they all need to go up, quite frankly. I mean, I don't think they've actually been reviewed for many, many years. And when you're actually looking at what people are paying, I know it is a service that we provide, but some people are running a business from some of the larger plots. And
From the
quite
larger
frankly,
plots?
from the larger plots, and what we're charging is a pittance, quite frankly.
Yes.
I think we need to work out the acreage and work out what they would be paying if it were a farm plot, and what they would pay then. And you would probably not charge them exactly that, but you would know better what it's actually worth as land.
It would be interesting to get some sizes.
Yeah. The information must be out there somewhere, but yes, it's somewhere in the safe.
When we,
I did a little bit of a Google search and other parishes come up and they charge anywhere from 90 to 120 odd pound a year. So we're well below.
what per acre?
They didn't really give sizes, it was actually just an allotment.
As I say, garden allotments are usually about 40 quid.
Which goes we're well under that.
Yeah, which we just need to bring them in line.
With half an acre of land, you can get some produce off that.
Yeah, the garden allotments aren't that big.
No.
But when we start looking at the other areas, most definitely, they are being farmed.
Yeah.
So that's what I think we need to be.
So how soon do we need to have the notices out there, John?
We have to serve it by the 1st of September and give 12 months notice, so we've got till
So we've got-
next August really.
Yeah, so we've got time to research, work out the size, if we can find out the sizes, even if it's a guesstimate of the size by, a quick calculation from a map, which I think somebody in the corner that might be able to do such things. We can at least work out what sizes we're talking about.
Can I propose in that we agree to increase allotment rents?
Yeah.
That's better gender item.
Anybody second it, or
Yeah.
all agreed? Thank you. So that's what we need to do. Okay. Nature reserve updates.
You've missed D.
Yeah.
D.
Okay. Discuss letting Butterfield's allotment now that the remedial work has been taking place. I don't think we should.
I don't think you should.
No.
Currently, I think you need to wait until we get an agreement with the trust as to the way forward, and then we can look at reletting.
May I just say something, sorry? A couple of people who have plots adjoining ones that haven't been let have made complaints because
This
they're becoming overgrown and the weeds are going on, blowing around seeds and things.
So, do we in the meantime, while we're waiting, just give it a dig over? Can't touch it.
You
Can't do
until-
anything.
well, technically, the report is saying that further work needs to happen on certain areas. If we were to do anything ourselves, we could potentially be putting people at risk until we know what we're actually asking people to do. If there's a very minimal risk, then that's fine. but we haven't actually established that yet. We need to, we've only had the one report, and if the trusts say, well, actually, yes, we would like you to concentrate on this area now and get that done, which they may or may not, but I don't know what they'll say, but if that's what they say, then we're going to have to go to another person to do a report, because you can't just go on one person's report. Actually, you're basically trusting one company that could be.
So how do we respond to the people who are complaining about their doing
Unfortunately, it's a bit like gardens and situations, you know, things do grow wild and seed and blow. You know, do you fall out with your neighbour because they've got weeds that are seeding across your drive? It's no different down the allotment really. So at the end of the day, unfortunately, there's not much I would say that we can recommend to do. You're not going to stop them snapping, seeding things down. That could be, you know, where they just snap the heads off thistles and stuff, but unfortunately, it happens everywhere. It's just one of those things of Mother Nature.
Okay, so 88 Nature Reserve. Any updates on the Nature Reserve thing?
There was a circulated to members with regards to the access for duck rescue, and that came back with some health and safety advice. So we just really need to revisit that, go back over the health and safety element of the situation before we go through, because although we agreed that we would do it, we're not still at that level where we're happy with the risk assessment and everything. There's some tweaks recommended by our health and safety team, which is fabulous, thank you for that. So we just need to tweak that with them before we go ahead. Although we will have, as we've reiterated in full council, a liability, it's not going to be as big as it would be if we agreed the risk assessment now. So that's ongoing progress.
And this is the time of year where it's going to need a bit of a tidy up down there as well now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
It's on schedule.
Yeah, it's on schedule.
the parks team will come up.
Brilliant. Any news on the duck feeder?
It's been filled up once a week now.
Brilliant. Fantastic. That's all good. Okay. To discuss and agree the budget for 2022/3. Okay.
I've removed the properties from
Thank you.
the open spaces one.
Yay! Sorry, Isabel.
Sorry, I'm not.
Different meeting. There was some blanks, wasn't there, to talk about on the...
Yeah.
I haven't actually got my copy, unfortunately. You don't have a spare copy of it, generally. Yeah.
So you've got beacon basket and lighting beacon.
Well, the lighting of the beacon will come under the events budget that we've already put in, because obviously there'll be certain things that we need to consider, but if the basket does belong to district council, then that's really not our issue.
So we can take all that out, yeah.
Yeah. And the
If we
other...
light it, is that a different matter? If we light it?
Well,
No,
technically,
we ain't right. We won't light it. It's one of the representatives of the...
it's
whoever
the
that does the actual
Royal
lighting.
Observatory Corps that
Sorry.
will do it, but we will have to arrange the event to light it. It is our beacon, as in it's in our parish, but the land is owned by district council.
So
So
we
therefore-
arranged it before, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my understanding of it is, and I may be wrong, that because it's on district land, it is district's beacon, but we would be responsible for organising the lighting of it.
I believe they're actually talking about repairs already, so I've heard. So if we can maybe just write to district to say
I'm in touch with.
you are,
Yeah,
so
already,
it's in hand.
yeah.
Brilliant.
Result, that's out of our boxes then.
Okay, that's them too. The in bloom or the floral displays budget, we did agree to add £1,000 in there at one of our meetings, didn't we? Which is obviously a minimal. I think that should be £1,000 to be honest, because you know, with regards to resourcing and outlet toilets and things like that, £1,000 should be able to provide us in the areas that we're designated presently until we've had the public meeting.
Yeah.
The only thing you've got in there, that you've got the tree work 15,000, bench replacement you've got 1,200 in to replace with composite, and everything else is pretty much the same as before. We've got 500 for professional fees at Hobby Bank. I'm guessing that should now go across to public.
Oh, is it? Because it's private.
It's a hard one, that one.
Is that in relation to the upcoming lease?
I was going to say that is the field then, that's not the pavilion.
Yeah. So yes, it stays in both places.
Yeah, the only thing with that is that obviously income from that, you've adjusted that, I think, haven't you, to because the lease is due partway through the financial year, is that right? Because the income for the under Holwich Bank, you've got the income is less for that financial year than it is currently.
Sorry.
Somewhere else, I can't remember where I saw it now.
Is that because payment comes halfway?
No, yeah, sorry, the rent, the rent is less. Is that because
The rent is less for Holwich Bank, where it says rents received.
No, so you've got current year, and you've got 1,033 for the Crown.
Ah, right, sorry.
And then the next year, you've only got 733.
Because that's all
Because-
it was. I don't know why it's ever in so high. Yeah,
Doesn't make any sense then.
no, it doesn't. It was always
And that's
over
always
budgeted.
been
700 odd.
It was over budgeted for before.
Okay.
Result?
I just want to raise a question down the bank. The pavilion, what's it made out of?
Concrete.
Bricks and mortar? Because in the full council meeting, we
Yeah.
clarified that all property, the chapels, all bricks and mortar was to be transferred to properties. So on a technicality, if that's made of bricks and mortar, then the pavilion part needs to be under so you need that splitting really between the two.
It is tricky because obviously on the land registry that is signed by the board.
Do they own it, the pavilion?
They signed the land registry.
So if they was to give it up, what they do, knock it down?
Probably.
Okay. So do we not have any responsibilities for maintenance of it?
No.
So that's not our bricks and mortar. And if we're sure of that,
If
then
you look
fair
at the
enough.
lease, the pavilion's not even on it.
So you've done a land registration of the football club have, and they've registered what the pavilion in their name
Yeah.
on our land.
Yeah,
It's
there's
not our land, it's the Crown's land.
Crown's land. Sorry, yeah.
So technically,
It's not.
it would revert back to the
Yeah.
Crown.
So the point I'm
Ultimately.
getting at is that if that is ownership and we don't, and we're only. I was just getting to the bottom of it's bricks and mortar, so technically it should be with properties, but if it's nothing to do with us completely, and I presume we don't pay any utilities for down there.
Well, you do, but we pay you back.
Okay.
It's very complicated.
But it's better to iron these things out now,
Oh, yeah.
and then they're not
This is
thrown
what
out
we want to
later.
do.
Yeah. So if we've established that ownership is with the football club, the land is we're looking after it for the Crown. We've got no liabilities down there at all, other than some play equipment
And the field,
and the field.
until we sort out that
Who's
sort of
responsible for what?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it just means that we've clarified that and used that agenda item for its
Yeah.
point. Yeah. I'm happy with that.
Is that everything for your budget?
No,
Wasn't it?
because you've got in 15,000 for trees, but we've got in 18,400 for trees for this year we haven't spent. you've got nothing in for projects, which you need to put something in for.
Well, I think we should, some of that money is going to be spent soon when we get the tenders sorted out for the trees, surely.
Well, I've seen somebody for the one in the dog run,
Yeah.
and the feeling is that doesn't need anything doing to it. And most of the others that were on the original tree report have been done. So probably this person I met there suggested that another tree report was done to look at the worst ones, and then we will be getting our own people trained.
So what about the two in the closed churchyard and the nature reserve then?
What the leaning?
Yeah.
The closed churchyard, we had already agreed that they are going to have to go out to contract. It's not something that we would want to even go anywhere near, but you've got to get permission of the PCC before you can even do them, because they're not
I haven't got
ours.
that, even though we put it out to tender before.
Well, you can't go cutting down somebody's trees.
No, I thought we already had permission.
Well, not as far as I'm aware.
Not in my 4 years, can't
We need to get their permission
Correspond with the PCC then.
before you can do anything. And if, I'm presuming they are on the PCC land and not on LCC land,
No, PCC.
so therefore you need to get their permission.
So we put it out to tender before?
Well, that's what you should never have done, because you haven't got permission.
So, just to go back to that point, Jan, did you say we had £15,000 in the budget that we haven't spent?
18.
No, we've got
No,
18,000, we've got 18,000, sorry, 18,400 we haven't spent this year for tree work.
So our preceptor is up to is that April. So anything, we've got to have something, because obviously that 18,000 might go down because something might happen, we've got bad weather coming. And then before we finalise our figures, we can tweak the precept, can't we, later on, and take some out if we need to,
Well,
or put it into the project fund, just move it across.
you've got 15, that was the 18,400 is for the current year we're in.
Yeah,
And then Rachel asked for 15 to go in next year.
yeah.
But you also need to put in some money for projects, because you've got no money in for projects.
So if we get a bit later on, before we finalise the precept, and we haven't spent that 18, we can whiz that into projects, and then we're still budgeting for 15 for next year.
Really, Rick wants to try and agree in the November-December meeting, so he wants to take the whole lot to the November meeting and then finalise it and agree it for the December meeting.
Yeah, it's a bit too early to agree the precept in December, at least in
Yeah.
January, really.
It's quite tight if you do it in January, because you're only going to be days off of the thing being having to be submitted. I think that's why you wanted it brought in early.
I think the thing is, you can't plan for disaster, that's the trouble, isn't it? You know?
Sorry, but just a question about trees. In our conservation area, are all the trees in the conservation area under a preservation order?
Not all of them.
I only asked because I was advised when I was chatting to somebody in Long Sutton that all of the trees in their conservation area, irrespective of what kind of tree they are under a preservation order, simply because, so it's not the case here. Right.
Isn't placed anywhere.
Sorry?
The tree preservation order is a completely separate thing.
Right, they must have it wrong then.
It could be an easy explanation to say to somebody, they're in a conservation area, and assume that there's TPO on them. We've got a house that's out in the middle of nowhere, and it's got a walnut tree, and that's got a TPO on it, but it's like in the middle of nowhere.
We've got one right next to Norwich Bank Park, but not in the park. Next door to it, it's got TP on.
So, you know, it depends. So can we not agree then that we'll, if we get to that meeting and we haven't used that budget, we just put it into projects? Wouldn't that be a sensible thing to do?
Yeah, but the money that's in there for this financial year is this financial year. We've got to decide what's going in for next financial year. You see what I mean?
So can
So
we,
you've got to.
so if we don't spend it, do we lose it then? Is that what
Well,
it's
it will go. We're going to be overspent by the time we finish, because
Yeah.
we've got lots of projects or things that have happened this year that we hadn't budgeted for. So will potentially be eating into some of those pots that we haven't
Yeah.
already used.
I get it.
I
So
think the thing is that we need to identify the trees that are desperately in need of being done. And if we can get some quotes in to get those done this year, if the money is still there, get them done. And then if we budget for a tree report for next year and some tree work, then we'll know what we're actually needing to do for next year.
mm,
I mean, I know as I'm working, Rick's keen to crack on and get these things sorted out, but, you know, life doesn't work like that all the time.
no.
No, it doesn't, Rachel, but unfortunately we are, we have to agree a budget in November, in January, and if we haven't got our figures right, then we're going to be in a situation whereby we're either going to be adding far too much into the budget, more than we need, which, then that means the taxpayers have got to pay more, or we don't put in enough, and then we end up with a massive problem next year, and we haven't got the money to do the jobs that we need to do. And, we have promised to do work for the public in the, like the inclusive play, like the fun track, things like that.
To scale back a bit, let's sort out what we're meant to be doing.
Can we not just put a round figure in for the projects in to say,
Yeah.
right, to give a good stab at some of the things that we've talked about this year, so we put 10 grand in for projects, for instance?
And we afford to put 10 grand.
Right, so before you put in your projects, this current financial year, open spaces have a budget of £150,263. Next year, it's 173,237, but that's because you've got a third member of the Parks team in there. Okay.
But that's all expenditure for sub-projects includes.
No, that's not where your project's in.
Open spaces.
We've had to put in, I've just noticed, like play equipment. There was £800 in, but we've put it up to 2,000 because there's things that need doing.
Maintenance.
Maintenance.
So realistically,
But
the figure's the bulk of our expenditure then, isn't it?
But it is our biggest areas, and
Yeah.
it's the thing that the public get the most benefit from. So ultimately, what we're talking about is what do the public actually want? Would they prefer to see our open spaces well used and well maintained, and to pay a little bit extra, and have better facilities, or would they prefer to fund, I don't know, things that are not more admin based and think, we have to do them, but the public don't see any benefit from that, do they?
No.
They see benefit from the things that they actually use.
I think, bearing in mind that we're going to be, heading or responsible for part of the floral displays next year, we really need that extra bit in that budget. I know we've just spoke about the floral displays having its own budget, but that's still a project, isn't it not? And we've got to see what the public response is to that. But they're things that people see, as Isabel said, and respond to. Same as the talk about the pump track and things like that. We've got to get these things right. And the open spaces is, am I right in thinking it's the biggest expenditure in the council?
Well, it is, it's the main part of the council as well.
Yeah.
We're looking at a lot of areas under open spaces, and actually when you really work it out, how much it is per head to maintain those areas, it's a pittance.
Yeah.
Really, isn't it, for the taxpayer? And if they're going to see some tangible benefits from it, I think we need to put something in there to deliver at least one project next year. Albeit it's not going to pay for the whole project, we are maybe going to have to get some funding in to offset that. But if you don't achieve one project next year, then you're going to end up with a problem, I believe, because the public will be angry because we've promised things, albeit will be said in the future, but they don't think about it as being, that might happen next year. They want to see things happening, and if they don't see things happening, they get angry.
This is why I said we've got to be more mindful of what we talk about and how we approach things and how we're putting things out. Let's find out if we've got the money before we can promise anything. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I know before I joined the council, that it is the visual side and the tangible side of the town that everybody connects with. Don't suppose they even think about things like the other areas that we deal with, like properties and things like that. It's their open spaces, isn't it? So we've got to get that bit right.
Yeah, most definitely.
Can I ask you as well, in your experience, because you've been looking after open parks and cemeteries for a long, long time, the 173,000, does that need tweaking a lot?
I think if we manage our budgets correctly, and now we've got our proper procedures and procurement policy, etc., we are more aware of where the money is being spent. And I think that even though we've put in the money for this year, I think that, or for next year, I think with proper management of the budget, we will be well able to manage what we need to do on that budget, and we may even be able to give more.
Yeah.
The 173 doesn't include money in for projects.
No.
So,
But still, I personally would, I agree with Stephen. I think we need to put in 10. I know it's going to up things, but by the time we've tweaked other places and whatever, there's going to be bits and pieces taken in. We're all going to be fighting our corner, but I do think if you can afford to put in 10 for projects, that will give you a really good base to go out for your grants. If you've got £2,000 in for projects, it's not going to get you anywhere. You're not going to get any grant funding, and then you're going to be stuffed again for another year.
Sorry, Rach. I think my idea behind it is one of the fact that once we get into the new we set the precept, we're going to know a little bit further on how well we've done. We do need to deliver because our public deserve that, and we've all got our hopes on there. But when you look at 10,000 split over the electorate, that might be 34p per. I'm just putting the figure out there now. Something very little on the precept. So I think we ought to put it in, and then if we need to do any emergency tweaks, we do them just before, right at the last minute, and put it in there so we can see if they're tangible, because we'll have everybody else's budgets, see what the precept's going to be, and then go to round 2 just to tweak it. But I think that gives us a fair chance of getting a lot of, or one major project well underway, and obviously with a great team, I think that we can help by making sure that those budgets are kept tight, and other departments will as well. So,
Always good.
could I just point out that we've reduced the cemetery fees income because when I met with Chair of Finance and we looked at year on year, we're quite down on our cemetery fees this year. So we were down a bit last year. So we've reduced the income down by roughly £1,500, just to let everybody know.
Yeah.
So our budget will be £183,237, including salaries. Could I have a proposal for that, please?
I know it sounds a lot, but in the great scheme of things, it's the biggest part of the book precept.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. To discuss and agree which mowers and tractors to retain and which to replace.
No idea.
Well, I think once the staff are up and running, you'll have a better idea of what we're using and what we're not using.
I think the key things that have already been identified as going, the old machinery, we need to get that gone.
Mm-hmm.
We have got somebody that might be interested in some of it, and I think we just need to say what you're going to offer and see where we go with it. At least that will be that side of it gone. And then with regard to the other key pieces of equipment, then yes, I think we need their feedback after they've been with us a short period of time and say, what do you feel is still functioning well and what is sitting there and not hardly being used, and then we look at what we can actually either trade in or whatever we need to do.
Yeah.
But those pieces that have already been identified, we do need those gone.
Mhm.
I thought one of the pieces identified needed a bit of maintenance before it began,
That's what I'm aware.
not the old tractor.
I haven't identified where that's going.
Yeah.
That's a potential go, but that's in this list that we need to assess.
Okay,
Mhm.
so I don't know then the list of what's going.
It's all the old equipment that we identified from the last inventory.
Yeah, the really old,
The really
old
old
stuff.
stuff,
Yeah.
that, you know,
That was
it's
agreed
not
to
been
go.
used for years and years, and it's just still sitting there.
Okay, so that was to agree and discuss, well, we can't really agree it until we know which is going.
So defer, yeah,
Please.
have a proposal, please. Second that.
All agreed? Yeah. Thank you. To discuss and agree to replace the lots on Park Road Cemetery and Carter's Park.
We'll take that to closed session.
Yeah, we take that in closed session.
Could I have a proposer to take that?
Yeah.
Closed.
I'll second it.
Ready? To discuss and agree way forward regarding the disposal of green waste. This is
Obviously, with all the work that needs to be done in all the areas of cutting back, etc., we need to look at how we're going to dispose of that waste. We have had tentative discussions with the staff as to what their feelings were, and they've come up with some ideas. Hence the idea of potentially being able to use the chipper, which we need to investigate a bit more. There was talk about potentially having a large skip that would be there permanently, but there is really nowhere we can site that that's in a reasonable area. So that's probably not a suitable solution. You could look at exchanging one of your general waste bins for green waste that goes weekly, so you could get rid of some each week, potentially. But I think the preferred option is a chipper of some sort, because then at least you can dispose of it around your sites, you can use it as mulch, it can be got rid of within our area quite efficiently, and you're not having to then transport it all over the place. It is within the area that you're doing work. So if we can get the chipper that we've got working efficiently and properly with what we've got, that's perfect. But if that's not an option, then there is one that has been suggested would do the job, which again is money. But if we're going to sell some of the equipment, then that would help to pay for that. But in the interim, we have got a lot of green waste that's been generated in just the 2 weeks.
Well, doing cannabis, yes, but...
And we need to have a solution to that. And if we have to hire in a chipper for, I don't know, 3-4 days or something, just to be able to get rid of what we've got, I think we need to agree to at least do that. Because else we've got loads of it. And they can't really do more until they've got rid of what they've already got.
I like the idea of us recycling our waste just for the environment, but the whole bang at the moment about saving our environment and our planet and our world and the Mother Nature and all that, it makes sense. If they can get that, or the chipper can get a running problem solved, temporarily we could hire one in, and then once we've tweaked things, if we've got budgeting money there, and we realise that we can not only mulch, pass it around the parish, might even be able to sell it to people, because people do buy bags of mulch from all the garden centres. We could actually start recycling all of our cutbacks and actually make some money out of it, and we're helping the environment too. So I would strongly suggest that we go down that route.
Or offer bags free to the public. That would raise our queue just a little.
You say free?
Free?
Free.
Free. For free.
Oh,
Gratis.
for nothing.
So at the minute we need to discuss and agree. So do we look at get the report back from the engineers about if we can use our own chipper,
Yeah.
get the feedback from that and then make a decision.
Well, can we make the decision that if that is not possible, that we can at least hire in a chipper
Yeah.
initially, because as we, you know, by the end of this week, if we can't shift up what we've got, they can't do any more work because they have nowhere else to put the stuff. They need to get rid of what they've got already.
I propose that we go down that route, I want it, just so we're not getting.
Will you be able to chase up with back from the experts on our...
We've only asked them today, so.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And if you can get a quote from Chislett or whoever we're hiring, how much a chipper is per day. Because what we'd have to do is ensure that the team, you don't want to stand there for 4 days, chipping. You know, they need to be able to keep on top of it. So one of them's chipping, the other one's one, and then they switch, and
Yeah.
so on and so on. So, you know, it needs to be, if it turns into an ongoing concern, we need to look at that.
Could I have a seconder to that proposal, please? Thank you. You agree with you?
To discuss and agree the way forward regarding the cemetery records being held by members of staff. To resolve to exclude the press and public with the public bodies admission to meeting Act 1960 due to the confidential nature of the business to be transacted.
I'll propose that.
Thank you.
All agreed?
Right, 94 items for discussion on the agenda items. Anything anyone wants to bring next time to do?
Nature reserve, hopefully you'll have that update for you and that's sorted.
Thank you. Anything else?
Update on the inclusive play equipment, because I'll have the first quote back.
Okay, well, if anybody has any to bring in, please let Jan know within decent time. Confirm date and venue of next open spaces meeting and committee. Well, they'll be here.
Will it be 7 o'clock again?
It depends what day you choose.
I think if we work around your calendar, Rachel, that would make more
Yeah.
sense. Do you
My
think?
calendar's changing again.
Yeah.
I know, tell me about it, I got told today.
So 4 weeks is week beginning the 15th, which is the week following 23rd, week beginning the 22nd.
I'd rather not do that week or that day.
Well, the week beginning the 15th is a
Oh.
problem for me because I've got something on the...
These things happen.
It's my
you know.
birthday, I'm aware. Again.
Hopefully they'll be taking it.
I
Thank you.
can't do 16th and 17th. 16th I've got 17th I'm up at Lauk on training.
Okay. Well, you can go into the following week, yeah,
So
it's just a matter of...
22nd, 23rd, 24th. Those 3 days.
I love this part of the meeting where you're just looking at your phones. You're on Facebook.
Honestly.
No,
no.
I can show right to the camera. And
So, yeah, I'm off then.
Go for an off day then. Because I can do the afternoon whenever you like.
My schedule's changing 3 weeks into November. I haven't got my new one yet. I'm on the opposite shift. So, you said not the 23rd.
Not the 15th.
Well, it
Right,
doesn't, it doesn't, honestly,
I
it doesn't
can't
matter.
do the 25th. I've got an appointment.
24th then.
24th.
Go for the 24th.
24th.
What
the
time?
11th is that. Can we put that time in? At 6 o'clock?
Yeah. So 24. Yeah. Thank you very much, one and all.
Thank you.